Those selling mindset advice should be in jail. I'm half joking, but honestly, only half. Because telling a stressed out founder close to burnout that he has to think positive is like training a drowning man to feel good about the water he's about to engulf him and charging him $2,000 while he goes under. See, elite founders don't really work on their mindset. They figured out that the whole premise is backward, because you cannot waterboard yourself with positive thinking if you truly want a winning mindset. That's just not how it works. A winning mindset is something you earn through a specific mechanism that turns your brain into a heat-seeking missile that generates heat by destroying anything in its path. And I'm going to show you the exact mechanism in this video. I'm León Castillo, professor, investor, founder of Selfmastered, and we help founders hit their revenue goals 4 times faster by training their brains for consistent performance. And I've learned the hard way after watching brilliant founders, me included, waste years on mindset work that never yield anything. But I'll warn you, because there's one step inside the mechanism that I'm about to show you that almost every founder gets backwards. And that's why you can spend years, if not decades, hustling endlessly trying to fix your mindset and still be stuck. And you will never notice that you're doing it. So let's start with the basics. I don't know who you are, but I know exactly what you want. You want to show up every day full of energy, confidence, and self-belief. You want to feel like a winner who crushes all obstacles without wasting time in distractions, negative thoughts, or doubts. I get it. We all want that. The problem is that the approach we've been sold to cultivating that mindset is backward. A winning mindset is not something you randomly generate out of thin air by drowning yourself in positive thinkings, affirmations, or God forbid, manifestation. Not a single elite performer in history anywhere achieved the ultimate goal, maybe a gold medal, an IPO, or whatever, by raising his frequency. They all got there by earning that. In other words, mindset is the outcome of a transformation. It's not an input to it. And think about how you come to think positively about someone else. Why do you admire someone else? It's never about what they say they are, but about what they do. You like and trust people when they show up over and over, winning until you associate them with that winning mindset. In other words, it's all a track record. And you're running the exact same scoreboard on yourself every day, whether you like it or not. Think of it as an account. Every promise you make to yourself and then you keep is money in that account. Every I'll do it tomorrow that you end up not doing is money out. And if you keep enough promises, your brain pays you in the right dose of dopamine and you generate a positive, energetic, confident trust in yourself and therefore a winning mindset. Break them and you feel like a fraud. And the reason for this is neurological. It happens at the level of the brain because inside your brain, there are roughly 2 modes of thinking, conscious and subconscious. The conscious mode obviously is deciding. The subconscious is keeping the books. And when you say, I'm gonna send those emails today, well, that is obviously a conscious decisions that you make. And it's easy to make that decision. It costs you nothing to decide that you want to do it. The problem is that your subconscious does not care about your decisions. It only reads the account balance. The balance is built entirely from what you have done in the past. So when you make the promise, your subconscious basically checks the account and thinks, in the last 10 times this person said they'd actually do something hard, how many times did they actually do it? And the answer is never, or 1 out of 10. Well, you don't have enough self-trust. And that lack of self-trust, that disbelief is the internal friction you feel, the heaviness, the negative thoughts, the I don't feel like it, the nagging voice telling you, it just won't do it again. That's the negative thinking that you may be experiencing. You're fighting an overdrawn account from weeks, months, or even years of not fulfilling your promises. And of course, you can't talk your way out of it. Your subconscious does not update on words or intention or how much you mean it this time. It only updates when you make a deposit. Every kept promise is a deposit. Every broken one is money out. And that's the whole mechanism that builds a winning mindset. But there's a deeper problem. Because the problem is that the account does not sit still when you ignore it. It drains every time you don't pay attention to it. Picture 2 founders, same revenue level, similar industry, product, and team. Pretty much all the same, except one keeps all small promises to himself every single day. The call he said he'd make, he actually does it. The outreach he says he'll do, he does it. The other set huge goals every Monday and breaks them by Wednesday. 6 months later, they're just not the same person. The first walked into a room calm. and settle because he has the receipt. His bank account is full. The second is anxious, scattered, second guessing everything because he's been breaking promises to himself every week or month. And that is entirely self-inflicted. You create this by writing a check that your subconscious mind cannot cash. And it doesn't matter which level you're at. First 10 grand or first 10 million, you're standing in the same spot. If you make promises with the front of your mind that the back of your mind has to honor, if you honor them, you compound. If you break them, you regress. And it doesn't matter how much you have achieved in the past. So the real question here is, if this mechanism is so simple, if generating a winning mindset, it's all about self-trust, why is it so hard to keep promises? Well, because of how your brain is wired. When you're facing real stress, low cash with payroll due next week, or maybe a deal dies, or you have a conversation you're dreading, whatever, your brain does exactly what a drowning man brain does. It floods with stress. The part that plans, sequences, follows through, it gets swamped. So your thinking shuts down and your survival response takes over. So you're basically in survival mode. And that's when someone on the shore yells, dude, just think positive. Everything is just gonna go fine. That thought has nowhere to land. You're underwater. This is a metaphor that I invented. There's scientist Amy Armstead at Yale that spent her whole career mapping this. And in her own words, stress takes your prefrontal cortex offline, that's the thinking part of the brain, and hands control to the primitive parts of your brain. So in essence, the part that follows through on your promises doesn't slowly fade, it typically just switches off. And the same chemicals that wreck you when you're panicking are the ones that sharpen you when you're calm and in control. It's the same chemistry. The only variable is your state. So step one is never to think positive. Step one is to get your head above water if you're drowning. And the scientific name for getting your head above water is self-regulation, which is not about feeling positive, but about getting to neutral. Neutral as in calm, collected, and in control. You don't need to feel positive, energized, and confident to swim to the shore. You just need to be calm enough to put one arm in front of the other without drowning until you get to the shore. That's it. Mindset coaches and manifestation types will tell you to raise your vibration or whatever. That's useless if your nervous system is hard jam in survival mode. The sequence here is very simple. Bring your stress down to neutral and then execute the right work. This is hard because your stress system is in survival mode. Your thinking brain goes offline. So you need to center it before it can get back online. The fastest way to center yourself is through breath work. 90 seconds of breath work helps you remove most of the cortisol-based response that keeps you stuck. Do that enough and you move your attention from the imaginary threat to the state you need to be in to actually do the right thing. Now, let's make this concrete. I worked with a founder not long ago, very sharp guy, building his second company, 7 figures in our current revenue, and he felt stuck. And the reason was his operations guy. So he knew he'd mess up when he hired him, but he didn't at a moment that he really had no choice. And he needed to fire him, but he never found the right moment. The team also knew he needed to go, but because he had hired him based on a previous relationship, he literally couldn't see himself losing the relationship. And he drafted the conversation 1,000 times, visualized it a zillion times. Every Monday he'll say, I'm gonna get this done this week. And every week he just pushed it to the following week. And the cost wasn't just that the company was running at half speed, is that every broken week that he didn't actually fire this person, he was eroding his self-trust. So when he started working with us, we didn't coach his mindset. We didn't tell him to manifest this guy's exiting the business. We trained his nervous system regulation. We trained him to get to neutral in front of extreme stress. And it took him 9 days to act on something he'd been procrastinating for about 7 months, I think. And within the next 6 months, his business grew by 60%. The only thing that changed, the catalyst to the transformation, was that he finally good proof of capability that he was able to do the hard things. And you're exactly the same as my client. Your company is capped at the size of the promises you actually keep. Not how much you know, how good your team is, or how brilliant your strategy is. It's all about your personal receipts. So right now, when something feels hard, that feeling reads as a stop sign. If you flinch, if you go to research instead, if you knock out an easier task, you are carving a groove in your subconscious that over time is going to limit your business. You must flip that switch. You must start keeping promises. You need to run towards the resistance. You need to consistently do what you rather not do, because that is building a stronger bank account. Every time you do what you don't want to do, you generate a winning mindset. In other words, resistance is the gift that signals the way towards the next level. And the confidence everybody's chasing only shows up after you have kept enough promises. You're never a thought away from a winning mindset. You're just a stack of kept promises away. Now you might be thinking, isn't this just discipline? No. And that is why you're likely stuck. All this content about grinding, focus on forcing yourself. What I'm describing is that the action only counts if you keep a promise. A random hard thing barely moves the needle. A promise made, even if it's very simple, moves a lot. What fuels the account is just not random effort, it's kept word. In fact, think about the most disciplined man alive. Let's say David Goggins. He didn't become Goggins by running ultramarathons. He became Goggins by keeping a promise to himself to finish every single marathon he started. That's the whole difference. It doesn't matter what you do. It matters that you actually do what you say you'll do. And no, this is just not available to a select few. There's no people that are naturally confident. Every time you see someone who is very confident, almost every time they are sitting on a very long story of keeping the word to themselves. You're looking at a full account of kept promises and you're calling it a personality. So now you see why mindset work doesn't work. Affirmations, visualization, picturing your elite self. At best, that's cosmetic thought swapping. At worst, that is very dangerous because you're taking a negative thought and you're trading it for a prettier one. But your subconscious never looked at the thought. It looks at the balance. And the balance didn't move because you didn't make a deposit. You just rearranged the furniture in a dark room. It doesn't work. And in fact, it is actively making you worse. And also, how do you know a mindset coaching improves? There's no test. There's no proof. It's unfalsifiable. You might feel slightly better, but then you're back at not keeping your own promises. That's not a transformation. That's a mood. What I'm suggesting you do is the exact opposite. Something that is brutally measurable. You either keep your promises or you don't. You make the call or you don't. And there's no story to tell yourself. There's no vibe to fake. The receipts are the only thing that matter. Only thing that is real. That's why elite founders don't work on their mindset. They figured out the mindset was never the lever. The deposits were. So here's what I want you to do today. 3 simple steps. Step number 1, make a promise small enough that you'll actually keep it. And it has to be something you've been avoiding, something you'd rather not do, something you wish you could pay someone else to do for you. Depending on your level in business, can be outreach, can be hiring, can be firing, having a difficult conversation with a team member. Then 2, sit down to do it. And when resistance comes and you feel yourself getting agitated as the survival reflex comes online, get to neutral first. Takes 90 seconds, use breathwork for this, find your center. And then 3, once neutral, execute. Do it for however long you need, without getting distracted, without doing research, without having one task open. And when you finish, jot down what happened. And congratulations, you've done the first deposit in a very long time. If you do this, it's virtually impossible to not improve your mindset, because your own brain will have a jolt of dopamine, seeing that you finally did something it was actually avoiding. So this is the mechanism. You cannot succeed if you have an overdrawn account. You must feel it. And you don't feel it with positive thinking. You feel it with positive proof. That's the only thing that compounds. That is what makes elite performers elite, that they have rewired their brain for consistently performance, one kept promise at a time. And if you want to speed run this transformation, there's a founder score that I've put together that has a way of finding out the specific brain patterns that are actually keeping you stuck right now. So click on the link below, run the test, and you'll finally understand what have been keeping you stuck. It can save you years of figuring this out on your own.